What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast interview. First off, thank you so much for tuning in, for checking out the show. Your support is massively appreciated. The only reason that this show exists is because of all of your amazing support. So we truly appreciate your support. I truly appreciate your support. Make sure that you're sharing the show with as many people that you feel would benefit from the show. The goal is to always grow this show and go out there and have a big impact. Real quick though, before we jump into today's podcast, I want to plug our sponsors that make all of this possible. Our first sponsor is my personal 90-day mastery bootcamp. This is my real estate agent mentorship training program. It's a group training platform. This way it makes it extremely affordable for you. Inside this program, however, I am unpacking my entire playbook. I'm walking you through step by step everything that I do inside my real estate business, everything that I've done, everything I've learned in my 12-plus year career with selling over 5,000 homes, with selling over $1 billion in real estate. And I walk you through step by step exactly what I've done, how I built what I've built, and what I'm doing today to go out there and create the success. But don't mistake the low cost for low value. This is an insanely in-depth, step-by-step program where I'm walking you through, again, step-by-step on how I go out there. My team sells 1 to 2 homes every single day in today's market, continue to grow my business year after year, and how I've been able to exit from selling, exit from actually day-to-day involvement in my real estate team, and create an epic, amazing real estate team that not only sustains but grows without my involvement. So whatever level that you're at, whether you're a brand new real estate agent, you're an individual high-producing agent that wants to expand and create a team, or if you already have an amazing team, or you're a broker owner that's looking to step up your internal training, looking to step up your systems, your processes, your tracking, make your business more predictable, this program is absolutely for anybody that's serious about leveling up inside their business. So check us out, www.90daymastery.com. Make sure you use promo code LIVEMASTERY, all one word, all together, all caps. That's going to get you the biggest discount on 90daymastery.com. You're going to see tons of testimonials on their video testimonials, what's included in the program, the future dates of the program. I do several of these every single year, so make sure to check us out and make sure to jump inside that program ASAP. My next sponsor that makes this show possible is PerfectStormNow.com. If you're a real estate agent and you are looking for a lead generation machine website backed by an insanely powerful CRM system that allows you to convert your leads to appointments at the highest possible level, manage all your tasks, make sure that you're effective and efficient as you possibly can be inside your business, transaction management component, all of that stuff. It is hands down by far the most effective and affordable real estate website and CRM program that exists out there in the industry. It's what I use to go out there and sell 650 plus homes every single year, and the system is gnarly. If you're signing up for that program, make sure to use promo code MASTERY, PSN, all caps, all one word, all together. That'll save you the $200 registration fee and get you a great discount. Our last sponsor is REO University. So I teamed up with a good buddy of mine who is the most knowledgeable dude, hands down, that I've ever met when it comes to REO properties. This guy used to work for the banks directly as an asset manager, and he developed so many of the systems that you see that asset managers and asset management firms and banks use today. This guy sold over 11,000 properties, foreclosure properties, as an asset manager. And he and I teamed up with my experience of working with over 35 banks in my career, selling thousands of REOs, plus his experience. We've created just an insane program. Again, REO University, the website is www.REO University. It's a one-time payment for $997, or you can split that up into 3 monthly payments. This is not a live boot camp like my 90-Day Mastery boot camp. This is something that you have access to instantaneously. We'll walk you through exactly how to go out there and get in with the banks. So how to get the business, but then how to service that business at the highest level, how to go out there and complete BPOs, how to complete cash for keys, how to make sure that you're insane at your valuations, how to go out there and make sure that your asset managers are winning and hitting their goals, key indicators you need to look for, and more. There's 22 in-depth, just amazing, powerful modules that will teach you how to become an REO machine inside your real estate business. Now, if you're like me, I don't want my business to ever be in a vulnerable position, right? I don't care if it's a good market, bad market. It doesn't mean that my business needs to be good or bad. My business can always be great. During a market crash, right? There's no such thing as if the market's going to crash. It's just a matter of when, right? But again, you don't need to put yourself in a vulnerable position. You can make sure that your real estate business is 100% recession proof, and go out there and, of course, generate business, do a ton of business regardless of what's happening in the marketplace. And this is exactly how you go out there and do it. And we walk you through step by step. So check us out, REOMasteryUniversity.com. You can learn more about the program, hopefully register for the program, jump on in. This price will not last long, right? We just created this product, rolled it out several months ago, and just getting in the hands of the consumer, and people are having a lot of amazing success. So again, check us out, REOMasteryUniversity.com. All right, again, you guys, thank you so much for watching this show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to share the show. Make sure to comment. Like us on YouTube. Leave some positive comments. We love hearing back from you guys, and love getting your feedback. Keep kicking ass, and let's jump on into today's interview. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast interview, where every single week we interview top entrepreneurs and straight up top badasses out there dominating their space. These are people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there, create big, amazing, epic lives for themselves, their families, as well as have a big impact on others. So today, guys, we had another amazing rock star guest on the show. Our guest today, guys, is a brand business and Brave strategist. She's the founder and owner of BraveMasters, Inc. And what she and her company really specializes in is helping people boost brand clarity, increasing their profits, and really going out there and unleash their full human potential as entrepreneurs, and really go out there and step into their greatness so they can kick some massive ass and create the life they want to create. So really stoked and honored to have Jena Rodriguez on the show, my friend.
I'm so excited to be here. Now, that kick some ass part was actually not in the bio that you were reading.
Yeah, I ad-libbed a little bit of that.
But it's true, right? We got to like get them, off their chairs and into action and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you deal with this on a daily basis, so you see it, exponentially more than I do. But it's so sad out there. I mean, whether it's people that have been close to me that I've known, or employees and people that I've had, or just other entrepreneurs that I've known or met over the years, that, man, they have so much potential. They have so much talent, and they just can't they can't get that drive to go out there and create it. And it just, man, it's so sad to watch, especially when it's somebody close to you, right?
Yeah, I have that. I think that's what actually created my drive, is watching those near me not really step into it. And the bottom line is I chose to break the cycle. Not perfectly. Clearly I've fell flat on my face. But I did. I remember kind of looking at it from an observer standpoint, very young, and going, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be like that. I got to do something different. I got to break the cycle. And so, and it's funny you say drive, because I feel like I can describe myself as driven, but I think sometimes it's more, in the past, I didn't always describe myself that way. It was more about, I had a necessity, and I had I have to do this. Like, there's not a choice. I got to figure this out. So that was the driving force, more than just like some internal developed drive. It was, you have to find your necessity. And that's what I clearly help not only myself, but also clients and colleagues and friends and all that, is to what is your necessity to do anything that you want to design? You can have a great idea, but if you don't have a necessity behind it, and that creates the drive, then you're not going to take action. You're just going to sit there and watch someone else do it, and miss out on the full potential. So yeah, it's definitely something I've struggled with, as well as, I guess, practiced and developed over time.
Yeah, so. I love it. And I'm excited to dive into that. I was just having a conversation with a good friend of mine who is an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And she experienced a lot of success. Now she's struggling, but she was like, look, initially she had that necessity because she was a single mother, had to put food on the table for the kids. Like I had no choice but to go out there and succeed. Now that my kids are older, she's like, I lost my purpose to that necessity, that drive. It's moved away. And now she's trying to rediscover it, right? And I think a lot of people struggle with that. So, but real quick, before we dive into all of that, I mean, you talked about at a really young age, right, that you kind of identified this. I'm just really intrigued on how you led into this space, into entrepreneurship, in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, how did all this come about?
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it short or not. But here's the thing. So when I was growing up, number one, parents got divorced at 8, so had that. And my mother actually ended up in a very abusive relationship with her boyfriend, and it was alcoholism, it was drug addiction, it was abuse, physical abuse to her, and I somehow got out of it without being hit, but I was certainly emotionally somewhat traumatized because watching my mother go through it was bad enough. So I spent about 5 years with that, and in my mother, and I didn't have entrepreneurship as kind of a model. I mean, and clearly as a young person going through all that, I was much more about survival and like self-preservation and, like, what do I need to do to protect me and and just kind of make it through the day. So I excelled at school because that was where I could control my choices. And at home, I really didn't feel like I could. But there came a point at 14 where it was my time to make a choice about my home life, and I moved out. And a friend of the family just said, "Hey, I know what you're living with. If you want a room to stay in, I'll take you to school," because obviously I couldn't drive yet. And at 14, I made a really hard call to my mom to admit that I didn't want to come home. I didn't want to live that way anymore. And if she wanted to stay with him again, it's like he came back in and out of our lives over and over and over, that I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I moved out, and it was so hard. I mean, I remember I can go back to that phone call. I was in tears because I didn't want to do that to my mother, right? We were very close and still are. And so, that was a very pivotal moment, and I never really realized it clearly until hindsight, but it was that necessity and to find a way to get out of what I was living in. And clearly any time before that, I was too young per se. But I grew up really quick with that. And I moved in with a friend, and eventually, and that was in Arkansas. I moved all over. I'm like, which state am I in at this point? But I originally am from Houston, and we had moved away. And so my father lived in Houston, and eventually I moved in with him to get kind of a break and be taken care of for that matter. But fast forward, once that occurred, and the good news is after I made that choice and made the brave decision, it gave my mother her permission to make her brave decision, and she finally got out of the relationship for good. So I didn't know that. I didn't know my decision would have that ripple effect, and that's what I've learned now is that your brave has a ripple effect. So whether it's influencing your children or influencing, your colleagues or influencing your clients, if you're brave, if you lead, if you, be the example of being in your potential, right? Stepping into your fullest potential, then that gives them permission to go, well, maybe I can do this too, right? And see possibilities first. If you don't even see possibility, you won't choose it. So back to the story, I finally jumped, out of that situation. And long story short, I ended up back with my mom, and we lived in Ohio at that point. And so my mom's a housewife. She took care of us, but she's not an entrepreneur. She always had a job of some sort or whatever to make as much of the ends meet as possible. And my dad was a computer programmer, and he worked in corporate America. So he was always preaching, hey, go to college, graduate, get a job, live in a cubicle, retire. And I'm like, I think I might kill myself. Let me just shoot myself now. It didn't feel quite right, even though I was like, okay, maybe this is what everybody does, this is what I got to do. And I certainly wanted the stability aspect of that, or what appears to be stable. I think it's an illusion now, clearly. But my mom, was an artist and a writer, and, but she didn't really fulfill that. I mean, monetize it. I mean, she did it, but it wasn't, full potential, right? And she's wonderful at it. And I got a lot of those gifts from her. So my models were not entrepreneur. But there was something inside me from the leadership aspect. I always kind of led, whether it was out of necessity or just the willingness to kind of take control or take over or whatever it was. I always found myself in leadership positions and leadership, opportunities. And so inside of that, it was always kind of like, I got to work for myself at some point because I'm just always wanting to lead. And so maybe that's the first sign of a good entrepreneur, is that, we want to lead something and change it. So fast forward, I've been in corporate America. I've been a fashion designer at Express headquarters. I've been a makeup artist in Chicago. We had a team that went on the Jenny Jones show. I freelanced. So that was my first little, touch at, doing something on my own, but still fell back into a job. And then I had the gift of both numbers and art and creative. And so what came easy to me was numbers. And so I had also the accounting background, and I ended up being a controller for about 8 years and being manager starting at 24. So I've done everything pretty early, I would say. And yet entrepreneurship wasn't the part of my early life. It came later. And so sometimes I always say my path is a winding road, and I think everybody's is, and the mountains that I couldn't see around, and, I had to kind of figure it out. And that was the truth. I had to teach myself everything. And, the point where I was like, all right, I want to do something else on my own came in 2006. I had kind of, I was still growing in corporate America. I was making a good, healthy, 70,000 on my way to 80 grand a year. Not too bad, right? For my 20s, and no college degree. That's a whole nother story if you'd like to hear it, but I never actually finished. I withdrew it after about 4 years when my grandmother was passing away. And so, fast forward, I was sitting there at 2006 in this job, and I'm like, number one, no creativity, not much anyway. It was all numbers. It was all like that linear thinking, which I'm good at, but I was like, where's the creative part? And I came across an ad for a boutique. And I was like, and it just piqued my interest. It's close to home. And I was like, well, if I look at this, it brings fashion, it brings makeup. It even had a makeup line. I would be buying someone else's store that already existed. And it would bring together my branding and marketing and numbers. I would be able to do it all, right? So sure enough, I actually went through the steps, because you don't know what you don't know until you try. So that's my motto. And so I filled out the application for an SBA loan. I'm like, well, what could hurt? If I get turned down, then it's not meant to be. And I got approved, and I was like, oh, now I have to actually make a decision. And I'm like, oh crap. So this might be real. And so sure enough, I talked to my husband, and, we had a 2-year-old and a 9-year-old at the time when I was making the decision. And I was just like, I not only had I taken the steps to see if I could do it, I really believed in myself. I'm like, all right, I've learned a lot, in all these years. Let's try it. And I had a vision for doing something on my own, and this is what crossed my desk. And so I communicated to my boss, and it was so funny because, there's carrots and temptation actually kind of get dangled in front of you when you're about to take the leap of faith, sometimes. And sure enough, the president of the firm I was working at walked into my office and said, and I'm in one of the departments, and he just says, hey, I want to talk to you. And I was like, well, either I'm in trouble or I don't know what he's going to do. I don't talk to the president.
I'm getting fired or I'm getting a promotion.
I'm like, yeah, I'm fired or promotion. I don't know. And anyway, so it was a great conversation. And he said, I really want to offer you a brand new position in the firm as the training coordinator for the entire group for 100 employees. I was like, wow, really? Right now? I was like, dang, what great timing. Because the truth is, had I stayed, I would have said yes. Because I needed something else. I needed something more, I would consider that a lot more creative per se. Anyway, I had to turn him down. I said, this is so interesting that you brought this up now. I've just made a decision to buy a business and go out on my own. And he was happy for me, but at the same time, probably a little surprised. Bottom line, I went into that store and I quit the job, cold turkey, gave my 2 weeks, and showed up at the store and did all the things to kind of get started. It had staff, which is a whole nother challenge, by the way, to inherit staff. But they were real nice at first. It was great. And then there were some other things that showed up because, it's real hard to get their loyalty. Right. And when you move into that space, but, I worked through it. And the bottom line, the story and how the ending goes is, a year later, I found myself, I made $300,000 in the store, which was shabby, but I found myself $700,000 in debt and 2 months behind on the rent. I was paying my people, barely paying myself, which was, highly concerning because I had a house and kids and cars that, kind of take care of, right? Take care of everything. My husband was also working for himself and still does. So our livelihood depended on it. And so I was at a crossroad. I'm like, what am I going to do? Right? Like, I don't know what I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to stop the bleeding. The landlord doesn't want to work with me. Wouldn't let me move to a smaller space. I was trying to think of everything I could think of at the time. And it just wasn't working. So I found myself sitting across the desk from a bankruptcy attorney. And I was like, I don't know what else to do, but this debt's insane. And between the lease and the loans and the inventories, and I don't know what to do, and I said, can you just give me my options? And she gave me 2 options. One cost me $12,000 to even buy or to implement. And I'm like, well, I have 8. I don't have 12. And she said, and the other one's 2,000 or 2,500. I can't remember. And you walk away. And she's like, so one, you can keep it and try to rebuild, or one, you have to walk away. And she said, so figure out what's most important to you. And I said, my family, keeping my house would be nice, that I've built and, and would like to sustain, and my sanity. And I said, I'm good. I think I can walk. I'm ready to just walk away. This just isn't working. And I had that I have 2,500, so it was so hard because I spent my life fearful of bankruptcy. And so this is one of those things I even left going, well, I just made this decision, and I'm laughing because I immediately saw how fears, if you don't control them and you don't really, stay aware that you're being fearful of something, can sometimes show up to serve you. And I spent so long being afraid of it because I made it wrong. I made it a bad thing. I made it, because my mother had 2 of them, and not that it was a bad thing for her. She did what was necessary, but I just had this perception that it was just terrible. And it was shameful. And so I made the decision, pulled the trigger, closed the store. That was only 1 year after I opened it. Right. And it was so painful. But like I said, I knew at that moment it was the right thing to do for the moment in time. And I could choose what I did next. And so when I woke up the next day, I knew I had to do something to make a living. But I was real clear, I don't want to work for someone else. So I partnered up with my husband. He was building a web design company, and he's also a musician. And so I said, well, on the website part of it, I can help you there. I can do the marketing. I'll go out and sell, or because you're busy doing the projects, because I don't know how to build them. And I said, but we need to sell more, so I knew all that. And sure enough, we quadrupled it. And not to say that was a lot, but it was, pretty good income between the 2 of us, right? Split the income in 2, but here's the thing, I think people as entrepreneurs, number one, we all come up against hardships. We all come up against the decision, and it's always about the decision you're going to make and the choice you're going to make. And are you going to be brave and do, sometimes make the hard decision? Or are you going to try to go back to what you consider as safe? And I'm not saying all my decisions were great or recommended. I'm not saying that either. It all depends on, your situation. But these were the ones I made. And I think the characteristic that is important, not the circumstance or the details, is, are you going to quit because it's right? I knew entrepreneurship at that point was right for me. I just didn't know what I was going to do about it. And I didn't know the how, but I knew innately that was still the right course. It was just how am I going to do it? And so you got to get to what's intrinsic or, innately part of you, so that then you can figure out the strategies or figure out the vehicle you're going to pick, to drive. But that was the biggest piece for me, was being able to be aware, or I guess be clear on what was happening, why it's happening, and be willing to take full responsibility for it. Yeah. And I wasn't in blame. I was I got this. This is what I did, and painful and all, but I'm 100% responsible for where I'm at right now. So what am I going to do about it? And if you come from that place, allows you to step into your potential. When you come from victim or no choice, or it's their fault, no chance, right? We can't step into that potential that we have if we're always looking outside of ourselves for the safety, or, the blame or the responsibility. And so once I did that, the business has slowly but surely grown. So I've been an entrepreneur now for over, 11 years approximately. And I've learned so much. I call it the best personal development course there is. It's sign up, because you're going to come up against everything you need to come up against, and everything that, will test you and push you, and uncomfortableness. And the thing you got to know is, I didn't speak of that bankruptcy until 2013. Yeah. I was still shameful of it, at some level. I didn't want to talk about it. I thought it, if I'm trying to hire, people are trying to hire me, what are they going to think if I say I was bankrupt in my first business, right? Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then she failed. How is she going to help me, right? So there was a period of time where I didn't speak of it. And the first time I did, and someone walked up to me and was in tears going, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you shared that with me," was the moment I realized that vulnerability and honesty and transparency is absolutely imperative. And it's part of the brave, right? It's absolutely part of being brave. And that's kind of my conversation now. And so here we are. The next milestone, just to kind of give you the picture of where I am now. In 2012, I fired my husband. I was like, this isn't working anymore as far as the business, and we're still married, 17 years. But it was really hard, because it tested our marriage, because our identities were so tied together in this business we were building. But I knew, again, it was the right thing to do, to break us open, to change the course that we were on. And he wasn't happy. He just wasn't willing to call it. Right. And so sometimes as a human being, let alone an entrepreneur, you got to be the one to make the decisions. And sometimes they suck. And sure enough, I got to that. It took me about a year to make the call. I knew it, but I was it took me a year to even tell him, I'm done with this the way it is. So it wasn't a pretty conversation. I remember it very clearly. But January 1st, 2013, I said, I'm going to take over the business, which again was scary, because that means I'm 100% responsible for the livelihood of the business, or the longevity of it. And yet I felt a freedom. I felt okay, now I can do this. Now I can move into what I'm supposed to move into, and he can move into what he was supposed to, which was music full time. That's who he is, 100%. Yeah. He's A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, and he's the bass player, amazing. And I wouldn't say so if I didn't believe it. He is, that's who he is. And I am an entrepreneur at heart. And I am, a mentor. I love helping people break through these things that come up, not only from, a mindset or, kind of self direction, but also strategically. And so here we are, almost 5 years later. And, I built a successful business, and I keep growing. I keep pushing myself. I keep trying to find what's the next for me, what's the next brave, most uncomfortable thing I can do. And I know I'm clearly not done. And there's probably a list of things I could say yes to that I haven't yet. But I just keep saying yes and then figure it out. And that's a sign of a true BraveMaster, is you're willing to just be vulnerable about that, and just say yes to the opportunity, say yes and say, I don't know how, but I'm going to say yes to this and let's figure it out. Because if you try to over prepare and always know all the answers and always figure it out before you ever pull the trigger, you're going to be wasting a lot of time, or you'll actually never get off the fence. Yeah. And so here I am. That was kind of the long story, the long way around the mountain, but it is so important that we, get connected to what our story and path is, because every step, every decision, non-decision, every fearful thing we've gone through is how we help people now. And I just believe I've had to go through what I've gone through in order to be able to help people the way I help people today. And, it's like, so here I am.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and I love that you shared that story and you are authentic and genuine about it. So many people are so afraid of failure, right? And yeah, it sucks going through those moments, but if you allow it to be so and do so, they become the best learning experience of your life and eventually become the greatest assets. I've been there in business where, I've lost everything, $100,000 in business credit card debt and had to figure out how to rebound. And yeah, it's painful, but getting through that, right, then allows you to become the person you need to be to go to that next level. And the other thing that I love that you said is you had the business, and you decided to go BK on that business and quit that business, but you didn't quit entrepreneurship.
That's right.
There's a big difference, right? There's there's a book out there by oh gosh, it's horrible. I can't remember his name, but The Dip, right, by Seth Godin. Right? And he talks about successful people know when to stop. Like if we're going down this path, doesn't mean you're abandoning your entrepreneurship dreams, but maybe you're just on the wrong path, which you discovered that. So some people might say, well, she did quit. No, you didn't quit, right? You just discovered, hey, this is the wrong path, right? From an entrepreneurship journey. Let me shut this down and then go that right path, which ultimately was the right decision. And yeah, it definitely takes a lot of guts. And I think the hardest part and I don't know, you can answer to this more so. I've been in tough situations, but haven't had to, necessarily claim business bankruptcy. But it's the idea of what other people are going to think and say.
Exactly.
I think
that's all it was.
At the end of the day, I don't think people really care if they fail. Right? I think more so it's the ego, man. They're so freaked out of what are people going to think of me? What are they going to say? Right? I told you so. The naysayers, right?
Yeah, I just ignore those now.
Yep, exactly. Well, but now, right, you repivoted and now, any naysayers that you had, I'm sure you've shut them up, right? So
yeah, just do your thing. I'll do mine.
So, when it comes to, you got, these few different elements that you really specialize in, right? Boosting brand clarity, increasing profits and unleashing that human potential, being brave, making those hard decisions. And I heard a quote one time that was, a hard life equates or is built from easy decisions. A great life is built from hard decisions, right?
And, that's good.
And but if we were to break these down, like when we talk about boosting brand clarity for entrepreneurs, because it's brand is so important, and I think a lot of people don't really understand what brand is. Most entrepreneurs are solo entrepreneurs; they don't really understand or grasp the concept of brand. So how do you get clarity on the brand, and how do you go out there and really grow that brand to have that impact you want to have?
Yeah, so great question. And I've just in the last couple of years actually came to what I actually call my system around brand, which is Brandarity. And it is actually made up of 12 components. And so I saw the same thing. People don't understand brand. And I really got clear when we were working in the web and graphic design company, because they'd order up a logo. Well, and then I'd spend a day trying to get them clear on what the heck their brand is so we can make a logo. But they just wanted me to make a logo. I'm like, this is so not the point, right? So I got really clear that that's not a brand. The logo is not. And so for me, Brand is who you are. It's what you stand for. It's the essence of, what you are putting out in the world. And then branding is simply the process of expressing it. It's maybe not an easy task. It is something you want to practice or get professional help with. But brand is where the foundation's built. Brand is what's going to help you understand how to communicate your value, and it's going to help you, communicate your, through your messaging and how are you wanting to be, a premium price or something that very mass available, and low price quality, as far as like competing on price versus not. And so we go through these different processes. I just have different activities and interview processes and, to determine who you are and how do you want to show up in the marketplace, who is your ideal client, not just from a circumstantial way of looking at it, meaning we're all clear we got to pick a target, like a target audience. I look at it from like, who's the bullseye, who's the it factor inside of that target, and I look at the intentional target client, which is more about their intrinsic characteristics, because there's plenty of people shopping for the same target and trying to serve the same target, but what makes you different and unique and more valuable is inside of the it factor. It's inside of how you stand apart and what your story is and what your experience is. And so for me, the majority of our time as a business owner should be spent inside of this inner game than so much of the outer game. And don't get me wrong, I like things to look pretty. So the logo and then, and the business cards and the websites, and I still think they leave an impression. I call them their silent salesmen. And so they're either working against you or they're working for you, but if you don't know who you are, you can't figure out what's going to work for you in the first place. And so that's where I spend a lot of time, is the inner game before we can determine the outer game of branding. And so catapulting your brand clarity, I think, is so important so that you can build it's kind of the foundation of the house, and then start building the house on top of it. And then you can, start to sell the house, right? So that's kind of how I approach brand.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I mean, if you look at the greatest companies that exist out there, they seem to do a really brilliant job with that, like Apple, Steve Jobs. I mean, it was so clear on who he was, who the company was, what they stood for, and right. And built that tribe that they built, right. Which was just still insane even after his passing, and people are like, oh, I can't relate with Apple. I'm a startup. Well, dude, he figured that out as a startup in a garage.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, well, hold on, guys. He started out with brand clarity. Yeah. He started out with a garage, and so I don't want people to feel like, they have to have it all figured out and they have to know what it is the moment they start. Some people are going to have experiences before they start a business and of course, if they work with someone, I mean, like myself or someone else that can excavate those answers sooner than later, then I think the investment's worth it. But even if you just get started, I'm more about like, what's the fastest path to cash? Get the cash handled, and that's where my business strategy comes into place, is, figure out what phase of business you're really in. And I actually have a system where it's 5 phases, it's like, and if you keep trying to be something you're not and try to prioritize actions that someone that's way beyond your level or your phase, you're going to like self-sabotage yourself. So I just say, always look at where you are, focus on the things that are important in that phase of business. And sometimes it's cash flow, and then take the cash and invest in your brand clarity and your branding and all of the things that come with it. Because I see so many people sometimes prematurely invest lots of money in branding, and they don't, and then they're changing it 1 year later because they literally learned a whole year about who they are, who their market is. And they, and it's like that you got to test the market sometimes before you can actually figure those things out. So yeah, it's still powerful to watch the big brand. I'm a diehard, like I watched The Prophet, I watched this CBS, The Titans, I think it's called Titans, which is really exciting to watch all of the big brands, and how they got started and how the leadership keeps them going and stuff like that. And they all started somewhere, and you have to evolve your brand. I always say there's an evolution to business and an evolution to your brand as well. And this BraveMasters is my, third rebrand, right? It's taken a new life. But I had to grow into it. and it wouldn't have been appropriate, 10 years ago. So yeah, I think that's really important for people to get about brand, and much more.
Love it. So then, today we're seeing a big trend because, with social media and I don't know if it's social media, but it's, you see a lot of bigger names out there, and I'll just use like Gary Vaynerchuk because he's just the first guy that comes to mind, where it's like, okay, he's got VaynerMedia, right? He's got this massive company, 700 employees or whatever, but then separately, he's building the Gary V brand,
right.
for that. I mean, is that something that you think entrepreneurs need to be and be focusing on of almost, it's like, hey, you've got your entity that we want to build as a brand, but you've also got to build your own name as a brand, because we're seeing a lot of people take that path today.
Yeah, I think personally, I think it depends on your vision, and I think it depends on, how you want to impact the world. Some people are really good at just building, starting and building a sustainable business, huge companies and huge corporations, and we never see the owner. Right. We never see the CEO. They're behind the scenes and they're making a lot happen, right? And they've built a team that makes even more happen, so they can step away from that company. But then I think there's like Gary or you or me, or, we want to make a bigger impact and really start to show up in a different way. And it's like, we want to make, a message be heard, or, or something like that. Or we really want to help people learn something, from our experience as an entrepreneur or as a business owner or CEO. Then I think it's absolutely imperative that you start to develop who are you separate from the business? What is your personal brand? And I don't believe personally, I mean, I might have to find an example, but I think people start businesses based on who they are, I mean, it's a part of you in some way, or it's an expansion, or what I call an expression of the stand that you are. And if I stand for realizing, my stand is truly about eradicating unrealized human potential. Well, that could show up in many different forms, right? And it could be, I am in corporate America, yet that's still what I stand for. I could be an entrepreneur teaching entrepreneurs because I believe entrepreneurship is about potentiality. Or it could be a mother. I mean, I can stand for that through all of the roles that I play and all of the different vehicles that I drive in my life. But I chose a vehicle called, a business. And then I chose a vehicle called entrepreneurship, and, like all these different things. So, watching some of these thought leaders and influencers show up is they've developed that foundation and that grounding of who they are as a brand person without the business. And so not only that can they say, I built this because it was a passion, or this was what I knew well, or whatever, but then they can also speak to something else. And then they start to build a personal brand or a personal platform, start speaking, and maybe it's a podcast or something like that. And I think you do have to be intentional about it if you want it to really grow and be clear to the marketplace. So Brave, I mean, people send me messages in Facebook and go, oh my gosh, I just heard the song and it said the word brave, and I thought of you. And I'm like, perfect, it's working, right? And I don't, that's not my goal, but it's just like they're learning from me in a space that, that's the trigger. And so, you got to find your way. And again, it's an unfolding. I didn't see that until probably 3 or 4 years ago, that's really my conversation. I was standing on a stage and I was just speaking to my points of view, and I was just like, this is what it's so for me. And I all of a sudden said, entrepreneurship is not the easy way, it's the brave way. Like, it just came out, and I was like, oh, I need to write that one down. And then it took a whole life of its own, and I was like, that's actually who I am. Like, from 14 moving out to homeless at 1999 to, bankrupt in 2007 to, brave is my common thread, period. And it's how I live. And so then I started to see part of my personal brand and then you can start to develop it, and then you can start to put some, framework around it. Clearly, if you don't, I think the hardest thing is to try to figure it out for yourself sometimes because you're too close to it. So that's when you hire a professional and let them, you know, pull it out of you in some way. And I think that's kind of my gift, is to excavate it in some way. But yeah, I think you're right on. I don't think it's, you know, I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think you have to have, I mean, we all have a personal brand, whether we're expressing it or not, you know, with logos and, you know, videos, but it is there already. One thing I always say is I don't create brands. The brand already exists within you. I just help you express it and help you identify it and get clear on it. And then of course, you know, branding, the outer game can be developed, you know, but the brand's already there. Yeah. We just have to uncover it.
Love it. Love it. So then, you know, increasing profits, right? I mean, there's so many components that come to this and you know, I mean, I do a teeny bit of consulting, not to the level that you do, but you know, when I see this, I mean, there's definitely some commonalities, but there's a lot of things that come into this. You know, I heard a statistic the other day though, and I can't remember the exact stat, but it was, you know, it's the majority of business owners, right? The majority of business owners are solo entrepreneurs and net like $40,000 a year. Like that's the vast majority of businesses out there, you know, right? Which is sad to go out there and see, right? They pigeonhole themselves into having a job and never going out there and making the income they want to make. And, you know, with you working with so many clients and helping them, you know, of course, increase those profits and increase the revenue that they're bringing in, like what are some of the biggest commonalities that, you know, that most people, whether it's a mistake or whatever, that just seems to have the biggest impact when they make these shifts?
Yeah. So I think you know, I don't know if it's a mistake, but a myth or what have you is, you know, most of the people I run into, number one, they don't have what I have called 8 years of controller experience. Yeah. And looking at books and looking at numbers and understanding a balance sheet and an income statement. And so I know that. But I think it's imperative that business owners get it, that you're going to have to learn it, even if at a very minimal, you know, stage. And so I think what happens is they get into business and they're not willing to look at the numbers. They're not even willing to go, it's zero and I suck at sales, or they're not willing to look at, I made $1 million, but I spent 800,000 of it, or 900 or $1 million, and have nothing to show for it, right? If you don't look at the numbers, track your numbers, and be real about that, then you can't manage a business. You're still running a hobby that's costing you. You know, I'm not saying that you have to be profitable from the get-go. I didn't start out profitable. You know, there were times that I wrote off and, you know, wrote everything off and I had a loss, and that's okay. But at some point you have to, if you aren't tracking it, you're never going to know if it's changing or growing or getting better. And so a lot of people, you know, I think come into business and go, oh, well, I can just, you know, put it in a bank account and then I can just spend it, you know, and there's no tracking and there's no clarity about how to position or project or, and I do my best to simplify that. I do my best to, I've got tools and spreadsheets that are real simple and they're formulated already. And it's kind of like, just plug the numbers in and, you know, and see what's possible. And then we'll back into how you're going to get there. And one of the tools I use is called Money Map, for revenue success. And it's just a spreadsheet that, you know, you plug in the variables, you know, and I think the other thing is before they even try to make money is they don't know what they're really selling. That's a huge piece of the problem. And so we got to know what we're selling and how much we're currently going to charge for it. And I know a lot of that's a challenge for people because they don't know what to charge. And so here's the item, here's the unit price, and here's the quantity sold equals the revenue. It's that simple. It's A, you know, times B equals C. And so if you aren't projecting or expecting the number you want, right, and the revenue, you know, if you want to make 100,000, but you're selling things for $10 and you don't sell enough, you know, and you don't have enough units sold, you're not going to hit $100,000 necessarily if you don't do the right marketing, right? So it's all about awareness. It's all about knowing what you're trying to accomplish, at the same time looking at it on a consistent basis. I love when people get to the end of the year and go, well, time to do my books. Yep. And it's like tax time, right? I got it. I've been there, a long time ago. And it's just a disservice to you, your business, your growth, it's like you're just going to take a longer time to figure things out if you're not paying attention or taking a look at it. The other thing, so I get kind of a basic understanding for people around their numbers. So, and of course, there's a lot of resistance. I deal with a lot of people that don't want to look, and they're like, well, it's zero. I don't want to look at it. Well, hold on a minute. If that's the case, then we got to deal with the emotions behind it. Because at this point,
we got to get the brave to kick in.
We got to get the brave, right? Exactly. We got to deal with that resistance, because if that's the case, it's going to show up elsewhere. And, so that's part of my process, is to kind of break down, it's not just about the data, which is necessary, but it's also looking at how do you react to the data. And the more you look at it, by the way, guys watching, is you will become desensitized, right? You'll just look at it as data. But if you're never looking, you'll be like judging yourself. And, it's like, oh, I did nothing this month, or I only made 3 sales calls when I should be making 50. I mean, like whatever it is, it's so self-sabotaging to do it that way. So I intentionally have my clients look at numbers, and they sometimes hate me, I'm sure. but the whole exercise is to desensitize and to also break down whatever the resistance are, because I got to overcome that with you as well. And we got to look at it, or it's just going to keep, you keep making excuses. Well, I had this to do. I had my family, my kids, it's like, hold on a minute. That has nothing to do with whether or not you made a sales call today or not. That's not it. Yep. You're not prioritizing it, right? And so we have to look at the emotions that are attached to the numbers. I always say that the numbers are the numbers. They actually mean nothing. We're the ones that add the meaning. Yep. So when we can own that and be like, what am I making this mean? Versus like, stop making it mean anything and just look at the data and do something to change the data. And, and that's how I approach the number conversation. And I always, speak to, it's so funny to watch. I'm guilty of it too. I mean, especially when you go into comparison mode, but you're out there looking at everybody. It's like, oh yeah, they've made millions. And I'm always like, yeah, I'm curious what they're profiting. Right. Like you can make $1 million and spend $2 million and be bankrupt. Yeah. I made $300,000, which is pretty damn good in the first business, right? Except of all the expenses and all of the loans and inventory, everything I had to make that 300 left me at 700 in debt, which means I was negative 400,000 on my balance sheet. So it's just this transparency that I want to see from people. It's not just about the million. And that's my goal too, but I will not kill myself trying to make $1 million if I have to give up $1 million to do it. Right. Like I want to be smarter about it. And so I do my best to run my business at a 40 to 50% profit. It's not always, if it drops below that, I need to make sure it's very strategic, and there's a good reason why, because I'm a service-based company, right? Now, product retail, totally different story. But then you still have to look at what are you doing to profit enhance, and how are you managing your margins and things like that. And so I think as solo entrepreneurs or just, entrepreneurs in general, we don't look, we don't do it often enough so that we desensitize ourselves. And then we make meaning of the numbers, and it doesn't serve us. And so we just have to take personal responsibility for what they are. And then we've got to look at how are we going to market ourselves and sell to make the money happen. And that's what I focus on as well, whether it's a sales script or, how to convert higher on your sales calls, and I don't think it's selling. I think it's enrolling people. Right. It's just like, it's a fit or it's not. This is what I got to offer. And yes, I can help you, or nope, you're not a fit for me. And, you just enroll people. You just ask them what they want and be willing to support them through that. And there's a price tag in order to have the result. That's what it comes down to, at least for me. And I think people get really hung up on like, I don't want to be salesy. And it's like, well, then don't be of service. Right. And it's a disservice not to ask for the money. People take action and are more attentive when money's involved. I always say people, if people don't see the value in what you offer, they will not buy free.
Yeah.
So how many of us have freebies out there and nobody gets them? You know, like this person doesn't choose the freebie because they don't value that in the moment. And I think the other thing that I always teach, there's a concept that I use called PER. And so people will not buy anything unless they're purring. And that means that it's a priority, it's urgent enough, and they're ready to do so. And I notice one thing people do is they have this language called, whether they're trying to buy something or they hear it from their prospects, is I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And I just want to knock that word off. I actually took it out of my vocabulary intentionally because I think it attracts, not can't affords. I believe in language makes a difference. And so I stopped using that word because the truth is whatever I was looking at buying and I told somebody, I saw myself do it. And I said, I can't afford it right now. And I was like, that's really not a true statement. If I actually sacrificed or chose to spend less in one bucket, I could afford it, right? I'm not talking about those that are just literally, down and out and have no money or no income coming in. I'm talking about everyday people. How many times have we gotten on a prospect call and they go, and I say the price is $5,000 and they go, oh, I can't afford it. And then they leave next day for Sydney, Australia. Like, it's not a true statement to say you can't afford it. It's simply a statement called, I'm not prioritizing this right now to spend the money. And when we can get our head wrapped around that, that also supports us in supporting them and sticking to our value. And so I do a lot of work on that because it shifted everything for me to be able to stop buying into the story and just hold. I'm there where they are. I'm not pushy. I'm here when they're ready. But I can't make them ready. They have to see the value. They have to be willing to be committed to what it's going to take to be invested with me personally, or buy whatever it is that my clients are selling. And I'm not willing to, it's kind of like if you buy into their story, you keep trying to discount yourself. And how many times have we done that and they still don't buy? Because it's not the money. Yeah. It's the PER. So yeah. I just gave a really big secret. I don't say that one very often.
Yeah, no, I love it. Love it. Awesome stuff. So then, the last point, I know we've talked about this a little bit. We've already hit on it, but people unleashing their full human potential as entrepreneurs, right? Yeah. And again, we just see over and over and over, and just like we talked about before, of people not stepping into their own greatness. And I think we can all fall guilty of that. It's, I'm sure we can all be doing more and become more and grow and expand.
Right.
But people have so many different limiting beliefs. And I speak to so many people that struggle. You talked about finding that necessity, finding that purpose. Mm-hmm. I speak to so many people that it almost seems like the method that they're using to find their purpose screws them up worse than trying, right? So what would you say about that? Where do people start that are struggling with this? And, because I think we can all understand the impact that it can have, when we
absolutely
greatness.
Yeah, I think the first step for me and something I heard somewhere and I really started to own it is that purpose isn't something you find, it's something you declare, you say so. And because my purpose or my why has changed over time. There was a time I didn't have children, and now huge part of my necessity and, my why and my purpose in life. And, so I think that's, it just makes it harder for people to do anything about it. If they're always thinking, well, I haven't found my it almost becomes an excuse. Well, I haven't found my purpose, so I'm not going to start a business, because I haven't figured it all out. It's that whole thing I talked about earlier is like, just say yes to whatever is so now and purpose or, your why or whatever it is, and then figure it out. And sometimes figuring it out is asking for help or getting a coach or, reading and researching or whatever it is, but you got to say yes first. For me, like stepping into your greatness and potentiality, or just getting your brave on is what I call it, is there's 3 steps. 1, you have to decide. So just decide what your current purpose is and decide what you want to do today. and not worry about what people think and not worry about what you might decide in a year, because it could change. I've been there. And so decide is step one. And then 2 is commit. It's great when we make decisions and we do nothing about them. And so I commit is about, like truly what is commitment, and it's like, it's prioritization. It's making the space on your calendar. You cannot tell me you're committed and you have no space for it on your calendar. And you filled it up with everything else that is important, but you didn't make the commitment to put it on your calendar. Commitment is saying so, right? And consistently saying so and practicing. And every day I commit. Every day I wake up and recommit. It's not a one-time thing. And sometimes my commitment falls off, it gets a little wishy-washy or, I could make an example, certainly, working out every day, commit or don't commit. That is the question. So, it's interesting, we're in this new year. And of course, I don't do the New Year resolution process. I just make goals. I'm a goal-driven person because I think it sets me up for, disappointment. So I just make the goals and keep moving. And of course, one of them was, health and refocusing on that and committing to it. So commitment is step 2 for me of getting your brave on and stepping into your fullest potential. And then number 3 is get off the fence or get off your ass if you want to say. And that is all action. You have to take what's this next step. You have to take action. And I don't care if it's small. There's not a size limit. It's literally just take action and do whatever's on your calendar next. Do whatever the next phone call needs to be. And, I run across this a lot in the mindset part of business, is that it's like, well, I can't is not part of my vocabulary, by the way. I do my best to catch myself because I still use it occasionally. And I'm like, oop, didn't mean to do that. But I can't do it because of this. I can't, the more excuses and reasons, just call it that you didn't do it, but then make a plan to take the action the next day or, what have you. And so if you decide and you commit and you take the action, then I think you're a lot farther along than a lot of people that don't get where they want to go. And along the way, look for support. Don't feel like you have to do it all on your own. Don't feel like you're out there, trying to decide, trying to commit, and trying to take action, and you don't know what to do about it. I'm not alone, and clearly I'm human. There are times when those 3 things are one of the most challenging things of my day. Or I had a breakdown the other day. I had a whole Facebook Live about it because I was like, let me get real. I just had a breakdown. And what I mean, I got really overwhelmed and I couldn't even make a simple decision. I couldn't even make the decision. And I said, what is that game show called, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I don't know, it was 6 years ago. And you had a, lifeline. Yep. So I called my lifeline. I phoned a friend, right? I phoned my coach actually, and just said, I can't even see straight right now. But I know this decision has to be made right now. Can you help me just see the options and see what I need to do? And she did within 5 minutes. It's like, all right, great. I'm going to go with that. So sometimes it happens to the best of us, but I didn't stop. I took action. I didn't just sit there and dwell on the fact that I didn't know the answer. I took action and I called a friend, and I got the help I needed. So if we do those 3 things just kind of at a very basic level, I don't think you can stand still. You can't stand in your unpotential, right? Or your lack of potential. You can only step into your greatness. And the more you do it, the faster you do it, the more accelerated you do it, the faster, it's like the more you'll get. And certainly be able to give in return. So
yeah,
that's what I got to say about that.
Love it. Awesome stuff. So, those that are watching and listening, all of our audience is entrepreneurs and I don't think any entrepreneur out there, can't benefit and can't expand and can't massively grow their business with, these 3 items that we talked about and what you guys specialize in. And those that are watching and listening, if they are, as you call it, purring, right? They're purring. Maybe they're purring and they're like, hey, I want to speak with Jena. I want to explore this further. I want to, just see if you guys are fit for each other. Where's the best place, Jena, to learn more about BraveMasters Inc. and as well as get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the absolute best way for that, number one, my website, very simple, is BraveMasters.com. And, you know, on the Invest in You page, there's a button that says book a call. and it's that opportunity just to see if we're a good fit, have a conversation, and connect with me on a one-on-one basis. Clearly, I have tons of free resources and free video training and all those things, the blog, the podcast. You know, you can see and hear me and like kind of learn my brand and learn what I'm about and how I help people. But if you are purring, or you're on that edge that just says it's now, I'm done with how it is and I'm ready to like get help, then that's the best way to do it. And of course there's, you know, a contact form on the contact page. But everything's there. I made it as simple as possible, and I'm on every social media pretty much. So Facebook, message me. I mean, whatever it takes, like just take an action, right? Like what we're talking about, just take the action. But yeah, so I'm here if you're purring or you're not even sure if you're ready, which is the R, but you know it's a priority to get the help. You know it's time to like stop trying to figure it out on your own, and you know, you're wasting time if you're trying to just, you know, sit out there and if you don't know what you don't know. And it's okay not to know everything in business. There's many hats that you have to learn, and I don't expect people to have it all figured out. Like that's what we're here for. So yep. It's good.
Yep, love it. Couldn't agree more. And those watching, listen, will make it very easy for you. There'll be a link right below. I don't care where you're at, listening or watching. This will be a link right below to Jena's website at BraveMasters, as well as social media links, all of that, so you can connect with her, follow her, and check out the website. And again, you guys, I end every podcast with this statement, but information without implementation truly is the start of delusion. Information is no longer power. It's taking that information, taking massive action on that creates power in your life for you to go out there and create the life that you know you want and deserve. And Jena shared so many amazing pieces of advice with you guys. They take something that you learn, take immediate action on it, so you can, again, go out there and create the life you know you want and deserve. And Jena, I know you're really busy. I truly appreciate you taking time.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. It's been an honor.
This is so good. Thank you. I feel really blessed to be here. So thank you so much, and love you all watching. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it was an awesome time. All right, thanks again, you guys, and we will see you next time.